The one constant in the future of work is going to be change. And those who are adaptable, who are lifelong learners, those are the people who are going to thrive.
Right.
So let's talk about this idea of AI augmented work. Because it's not just about AI replacing us, right? It's about AI becoming this powerful tool that we can use to do our jobs better, to be more efficient, to be more creative.
Right. And the article has some great examples of this, like doctors using AI to analyze complex medical images.
Yeah. So instead of spending hours poring over scans, the AI can do that initial analysis, highlight potential issues, and then the doctor can step in with their expertise to interpret the findings, make those critical decisions, and most importantly, spend more time with their patients.
And teachers using personalized learning platforms powered by AI. I mean, imagine a system that can tailor the learning experience to each student's individual needs and pace.
That's amazing, right? It is. And it's becoming a reality. AI can help identify those areas where students are struggling and recommend specific resources or activities that can help them catch up. It can even adjust the pace of the lesson based on how well the student is understanding the material. So it's really about creating a more personalized, more effective learning experience for every student.
And software developers, they're using AI tools to write code faster and debug it more efficiently.
Yeah. I mean, coding can be a very time-consuming process, but AI can automate some of those more routine tasks, the stuff that's repetitive or predictable. So that frees up developers to focus on the more complex, creative aspects of their work. They can spend more time innovating and coming up with new solutions.
And even marketing. I mean, AI is being used to analyze consumer behavior and optimize campaigns.
Yeah, marketing's becoming increasingly data-driven, and AI is the perfect tool for that. It can process huge amounts of data, identify those trends and patterns, and then help marketers create campaigns that are more targeted, more effective, and ultimately more successful.
So it seems like the future of work across all these different industries is really going to be about this partnership between humans and AI.
Right. It's not about one replacing the other. It's about finding that sweet spot where they work together, each contributing their unique strengths.
So how do we prepare for this? I mean, it all sounds really exciting, but also a little daunting.
Well, the article really stresses the importance of workforce adaptation and reskilling.
Right.
So for you, the listener, thinking about your own career, this is where the rubber meets the road. You've got to be proactive. You've got to start thinking about what skills you're going to need to thrive in this AI-driven world. And the good news is there are tons of resources available to help you do that.
Okay, like what? Give us some specifics.
Well, first off, STEM education is becoming more and more important. Science, technology, engineering, math, those are the foundational skills for a lot of these emerging AI-related careers. But it's not just for aspiring AI engineers.
Right.
Digital literacy is becoming crucial for pretty much everyone, no matter what field you're in.
What does that mean exactly?
Well, it means having a basic understanding of how computers work, how data is used, how algorithms make decisions. It means being comfortable with technology and being able to adapt to new tools and platforms. And it means, having at least a basic understanding of how AI systems work, even if you're not the one building them.
Right. And then there are those soft skills, right? The ones that AI can't replicate so easily.
Exactly. Creativity, emotional intelligence, critical thinking, problem solving, adaptability. These are the skills that are going to be in high demand because they're the skills that make us uniquely human.
And how do we develop those skills? I mean, you can't just download them, right?
You can't, no. But you can practice them, you can cultivate them.
Okay.
Well, for creativity, try taking a class. Experiment with different art forms. Put yourself in situations where you have to think outside the box. For emotional intelligence, practice active listening. Pay attention to your own emotions and how they impact others. Read books or articles about empathy and communication. And for problem solving and adaptability, well, life throws us plenty of curveballs, right?
Right.
So embrace those challenges. See them as opportunities to learn and grow.
I like that.
And remember, this is a lifelong journey. The concept of lifelong learning is so important in this rapidly changing world. It's not about getting a degree and then coasting for the rest of your career. It's about continuously upgrading your skills and knowledge, staying curious, and being willing to learn new things throughout your life.
Right. And the good news is there are so many resources available to help us do that.
Exactly. Online courses, workshops, even AI-powered learning platforms that can personalize the learning experience based on your individual needs and goals.
And it's not just on individuals to figure this all out, right? Companies and governments also have a role to play.
Absolutely.
The article talks about companies investing in reskilling their workforce, and governments providing funding and support for training programs.
Right. So if you're in a leadership position or you own a business, think about how you can support your employees in this transition.
Yeah.
Provide them with opportunities to learn about AI, develop new skills, and experiment with these new tools.
Yeah.
And for governments, well, they have a responsibility to ensure that the workforce is prepared for the jobs of the future. That means investing in education and training programs and creating policies that support lifelong learning and reskilling.
So looking ahead, what does this AI-driven future of work actually look like? The article paints a pretty interesting picture, with remote and hybrid work becoming more common.
Yeah, I mean, we've already seen a huge shift towards remote work, and AI is only going to accelerate that trend.
Right.
With AI-powered collaboration tools and virtual workspaces, we can work from anywhere in the world and still be productive, still be connected to our teams.
And this idea of human-AI collaboration, that seems to be the core of it all, right?
Absolutely. The future of work isn't about AI taking over. It's about humans and AI working together, leveraging each other's strengths.
Right.
AI can handle those data-intensive tasks, automate the routine stuff, but humans bring creativity, critical thinking, emotional intelligence to the table. That's the winning combination.
And the gig economy, that's another area that's evolving.
Yeah, AI is making it easier for freelancers to connect with clients and find projects that match their skills. And it's helping companies find the talent they need quickly and efficiently. So it's a win-win.
And AI is even changing how we think about entrepreneurship, right?
Right. It's lowering the barriers to entry for new businesses, making it easier to automate tasks, personalize marketing efforts, and gain insights into customer behavior.
So a lot to unpack here, but if we had to distill it down to a few key takeaways for the listener, what would you say?
I would say, number one, be adaptable. The world of work is changing faster than ever, so be willing to learn new things, embrace new technologies, and be open to new ways of working. Number two, commit to lifelong learning.
Right.
Never stop learning, never stop growing. Make it a habit to seek out new knowledge and skills throughout your life. And number three, be proactive.
Okay.
Don't wait for the future to happen to you. Start thinking about how you can prepare for it now. Identify those skills you need to develop. Explore those online courses. Connect with people in your field who are already using AI and experiment with these new technologies.
That's great advice.
And remember, this is an exciting time. Yes, there are challenges, but there are also incredible opportunities.
I like that perspective.
So embrace the change, be curious, be bold, and I have no doubt you'll thrive in this AI-driven future of work.
Okay, so one final thought for our listeners before we wrap up, and I want to make this really practical, something you can actually do today. Think about one small way you can integrate learning about AI into your routine. Maybe it's reading an article, listening to a podcast, other than this one, taking a short online course, or even just playing around with an AI-powered tool.
Yeah, like one of those AI image generators.
Exactly.
Those are fun.
They are fun. What new skill, even something small, maybe tangentially related to AI, sparks your curiosity?
Yeah.
Because exploring that curiosity could be the key to unlocking a whole new world of possibilities for you in this rapidly evolving job market.
I love that.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. And as always, we'll see you next time for another insightful exploration of the topics that matter most.
It seems like everywhere you turn nowadays, there's this idea that you have to think positive to like have a good life, right?
Yeah.
Like it's the key to it all. And, you know, you see it everywhere from those old self-help books, like
Yeah.
that Norman Vincent Peale book, The Power of Positive Thinking. That's like way back in the 50s.
Yeah.
But then you also see it now in all the like mindfulness and manifesting stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
So it makes you kind of wonder, like, is it real?
Yeah.
Does it actually make a difference if you just like change your mindset?
Well, that's what we're going to dive into today.
Okay.
We've got a whole bunch of sources that really explore like the psychology behind it,
Okay.
the science behind it, whether it actually works in practice, and, you know, what the limitations might be.
Right. Because you hear all these stories, right?
Yeah.
Like people who say that just like flipping that mental switch, like had changed their entire life.
Yeah.
But then you also have people who are like, this is just a bunch of fluff.
Like, just ignore your problems and just be happy.
Exactly. Yeah. And it can feel kind of dismissive sometimes, can it?
Totally.
Like, oh, just, you know, put on a happy face and everything will be okay.
Yeah. So let's like get past all that surface level stuff
Yeah, let's get into it.
and figure out what's really going on.
All right. So first of all, what are we even talking about when we say positive thinking?
Right. Good point.
Because the sources are pretty clear that it's not about like pretending bad things aren't happening.
Right.
Or, just slapping a smile on and ignoring the hard stuff.
Yeah, you can't just like fake it till you make it right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's more about, like actively choosing to focus on the possibilities.
Okay.
And like searching for solutions and recognizing, the strengths that you have.
So it's more about like shifting your focus
Yeah.
than pretending everything's perfect.
Yeah, exactly. Like instead of seeing a setback as like the end of the world, you see it as a chance to learn something.
Right. Or even just like remembering to be grateful for the good stuff, even when things are hard. Yes. Gratitude, that comes up a lot
It does.
in these sources. And, a big part of this is like that voice we all have in our heads, right?
Oh yeah, our self-talk.
Yeah, that inner monologue that's constantly running.
That can be brutal.
Oh, it can be, right?
Yeah.
And that really influences how we see ourselves in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So positive thinking becomes about, like steering that voice,
Okay.
shifting it away from negativity and towards something more helpful.
So instead of beating yourself up, you're kind of like cheering yourself on.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not about like, waving a magic wand and changing what's happening around you,
Right.
but changing how you respond to it.
Okay, so it's like an inside job first.
Yeah, it starts internally.
Why does that even matter?
That's a good question.
Like, why does changing your thoughts actually change anything on the outside?
Well, this is where this thing called cognitive behavioral theory, or CBT, comes in.
Okay, I've heard of that.
Yeah, it's pretty well known, and basically what it says is that our thoughts, our feelings, and our actions are all linked.
Okay.
So like if you're stuck in these negative thought patterns that can like create a downward spiral, you feel bad, you act in ways that aren't helpful, and it just keeps going.
Right, you get trapped.
Yeah, but the cool thing is that it works the other way too.
Okay.
So by actively, questioning those negative thoughts
Okay.
and replacing them with more positive or even just like more realistic ones,
Right.
you can break out of that cycle.
Okay.
You can build resilience, increase your motivation, and end up with like a more positive overall perspective.
I mean, it makes sense, right?
Yeah.
If you're always telling yourself, I can't do this, you're probably not going to try very hard.
Exactly. You're kind of setting yourself up for failure.
Right. Self-fulfilling prophecy kind of thing.
Exactly. And that's another thing that our sources talk about, that if you really believe you're going to succeed, you're more likely to take risks, to persevere when things get tough, and to see and grab opportunities when they come up.
Like you're putting yourself out there more.
Yeah, you're creating a path for yourself.
Okay.
Whereas if you're constantly expecting to fail, you might just, stay stuck and avoid those challenges.
Right. So it's not just about like feeling good. It can actually lead to different actions.
Exactly. It can shape your behavior in ways that have real world consequences.
So it's not just fluffy stuff.
No, it's got some teeth to it.
Okay. So what about the science?
Yeah.
Is there actual proof that this positive thinking stuff has benefits?
Well, the research is complicated,
Yeah.
but there are some pretty interesting findings.
Like what?
Well, there's this whole field of positive psychology.
Okay.
And researchers like Martin Seligman have shown that there's a clear link between optimism
Okay.
and better mental health, lower stress levels, and just overall greater life satisfaction.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And then there's studies that suggest it might even have effects beyond that.
Oh, really? Like what?
Well, there's this big study they mentioned in the American Journal of Epidemiology that followed like tons of people for over 20 years.
Okay.
And they found that the people who started out more optimistic were significantly less likely to get heart disease,
Wow.
even after they took into account things like smoking and income.
So it's not just that they were healthier in general.
Right. It seems like optimism itself played a role.
That's wild.
And there's another study in psychosomatic medicine
Okay.
that looked at a bunch of different studies all at once.
Okay.
And it showed that positive emotions like joy and hope were connected to a better functioning immune system
Wow.
and even living longer.
So we're talking like actual physical health benefits here.
Yeah, it seems like it goes beyond just how we feel.
It's like mind over matter almost.
Yeah, and the placebo effect's another interesting thing to think about here.
Okay. Explain that one.
So sometimes when people believe that a treatment is going to work, they actually get better, even if the treatment itself doesn't do anything. Yeah, it's like the power of belief.
Wow.
And that suggests that our minds can have a really strong influence on our bodies.
Okay.
So it's possible that a positive outlook could trigger positive physical changes.
So it's not all just in your head.
No, it could be in your cells too.
That's crazy.
It is pretty wild. But, we have to acknowledge that not all the research is totally on board with just being positive all the time.
Right, like there has to be some downsides.
Yeah, there are definitely some cautions.
Okay, like what?
Well, there was this study in the journal Emotion a while back that found that for people who already had low self-esteem, repeating positive affirmations could actually make them feel worse.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's like if you're telling yourself something you don't believe, it just highlights how much you don't believe it.
Right, it's like lying to yourself.
Kinda, yeah. And then there's the danger of becoming too optimistic.
Right.
To the point where you're denying reality.
Oh, yeah, like if you ignore a health problem because you're just trying to stay positive.
Yeah, exactly. That can be really dangerous.
Right, positivity is not a substitute for like actually dealing with stuff.
Yeah, you can't just wish problems away.
So it's not about ignoring the bad stuff. It's more about choosing how you respond to it.
Yeah, choosing a more helpful perspective.
Okay, so let's talk about like real world examples.
Okay.
Like how does this positive thinking stuff actually play out in people's lives?
Well, we see kind of a mixed bag.
Okay.
On one hand, you have those inspiring stories, athletes using visualization to improve their performance, entrepreneurs who credit their success to their unwavering belief.
Like the ones who just never gave up on their dream.
Right. They just kept believing it would happen.
I guess that makes sense. If you don't believe in yourself, no one else will, right?
Exactly. And in our everyday lives, a positive attitude can definitely help with things like relationships and productivity.
Right. Like if you're a manager who focuses on what your team does well, you're probably going to get better results than if you're constantly criticizing them.
Yeah, you create a more supportive environment that way.
And it's probably the same for like students. Right?
Totally. If you see a bad grade as a chance to learn, you're more likely to bounce back.
Than if you just like give up.
Exactly.
But there are also limits, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like positive thinking is not a magic bullet.
Right.
It can't solve every problem, especially problems that are outside of your control.
Like you can't just think your way out of a pandemic, right?
Right. Or a recession or, systemic injustice.
Okay, so it's more about dealing with the things you can control.
Yeah, exactly. It's a tool, not a cure-all.
Okay, so what about this idea of toxic positivity?
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
Like when does positive thinking go too far?
Well, it becomes toxic when it's used to suppress negative emotions.
Yeah.
Like telling someone who's grieving to just look on the bright side.
Yeah, that's not helpful.
No, it's dismissive and invalidates their feelings.
Like saying their feelings aren't real?
Yeah, and some psychologists argue that it's actually healthier to be what they call emotionally agile.
Okay, what does that mean?
It means acknowledging and accepting all your feelings, the good and the bad.
So you're not trying to force yourself to be happy all the time?
Exactly. You're allowing yourself to experience the full spectrum of human emotions.
That sounds a lot healthier.
It probably is. And then there's also the danger of positive thinking leading to unrealistic expectations.
Okay.
Like that whole law of attraction thing.
Oh, yeah, like if you just visualize what you want hard enough, it'll magically appear.
Yeah, and that can be really misleading.
Right.
Because when those things don't happen, people can end up blaming themselves.
Yeah, like it's their fault for not thinking positively enough.
Exactly. And that can lead to a lot of guilt and despair.
So where does that leave us?
Well, it seems like the key is finding a balance.
Okay.
Like this idea of realistic optimism.
Okay, I like that.
It's about finding that sweet spot between being overly positive and being overly negative.
So you're not denying the bad stuff, but you're also not letting it drag you down.
Exactly. You're acknowledging the challenges, but you're still believing in your ability to cope.
To get through it.
Yeah. And there's this cool theory called the broaden and build theory by Barbara Fredrickson.
Okay.
And it says that positive emotions actually make us think more broadly.
Okay.
We become more creative, more open to new possibilities.
Interesting.
And it also helps us build resources.
Like what?
Like stronger relationships.
Okay.
Which can be really helpful when we're facing tough times.
Yeah, like a support system.
Exactly.
So it's not just about thinking positive, it's about what those positive thoughts allow you to do.
Right. It can kind of snowball into other positive things.
Okay, so it sounds like positive thinking is not a myth, but it's also not a magic solution.
Yeah, it's more like a tool that can help us navigate life's ups and downs.
It's like a lens you can choose to look through.
Yeah, a way of framing things.
But it's still important to be realistic.
Absolutely.
And to take action.
Yeah, it's not just about thinking, it's about doing too.
So I guess the takeaway here is that positive thinking, when it's done thoughtfully, can be really powerful. It can help us be more resilient, maybe even healthier.
Yeah.
And it can help us achieve our goals.
But it has to be combined with action and a realistic outlook.
Right. It's not about ignoring problems. It's about facing them with a different mindset.
Exactly.
So for everyone listening out there, maybe think about this. Where in your life is the line between positive thinking and just avoiding reality? Kind of blurry.
Yeah.
And is there a way you can shift your perspective just a little bit to be more realistically optimistic?
Yeah.
You might be surprised by what happens.
It could make a bigger difference than you think.
Just give it a shot.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so you guys sent in some really interesting stuff for us to dig into. An article all about the psychology of lying. Looks like you want to get to the bottom of why we humans, sometimes bend the truth a little bit or a lot.
And that's exactly what we're going to do today. Sort of a deep dive together. We'll figure out the most important parts and hopefully make sense of it all without getting too bogged down in all the technical terms, of course.
Yeah, no one wants that.
Okay.
So this article you sent, it's pretty comprehensive, covers a lot of ground. It defines lying, digs into the science behind it, talks about the different types of lies, the why, the how, even touches on how we might be able to encourage more honesty.
It does, and that's what we're going to try to do today. Break it all down, give you a clear picture of this very human behavior, something you can really walk away with and maybe even use in your own life.
Sounds good to me. So the article kicks off with what seems like a pretty basic question. What actually is a lie? But it gets complicated pretty quickly. It's not just about saying something that's, factually incorrect.
Right. The key here is intent. It has to be intentional. A lie is a false statement made on purpose with the goal of deceiving someone else. And what's interesting is that deception, it comes in many forms. You have the big, obvious lies, but also little white lies, exaggerations, and even just leaving out important information. The article calls those lies of omission.
Yeah, lies of omission. Those are sneaky. So it's really a whole spectrum of dishonesty, isn't it?
Absolutely. And it's not just a social thing either. This article goes into the science of it all, like what's happening in our brains when we're not being truthful.
Yeah, that's what I find really interesting.
Yeah, it turns out lying actually has a biological basis. When we lie, certain parts of the brain light up, specifically the prefrontal cortex, which is kind of like the brain's command center where we make decisions and judgments, and the amygdala, which handles emotions like fear and guilt. Oh, and the limbic system, which is involved in our stress response.
So it's not like our brains just effortlessly come up with lies, huh?
Not at all. It's actually more demanding. Studies using fMRI, which is a way to image brain activity, suggest that lying takes more effort than telling the truth. Think about it. You have to suppress the truth while creating a believable lie at the same time.
Whoa, that's pretty wild. So much for those easy lies, huh?
Exactly. And then the article goes on to categorize different types of lies. It breaks it all down, and that's really helpful, I think, to understand all the nuances. Because lying, it's not just one thing.
Right. It's a whole complicated mess, really. So what are some of these categories?
Well, there are 6 main types that they outline in the article. First, we have the white lies. Those are the little ones we tell to, kind of smooth things over socially, like telling someone you like their cooking, even if you don't.
Yeah, those are the classic examples, usually meant to avoid hurting someone's feelings.
Right. Then you have pathological lies. And those are a bit more complex. It's when someone lies habitually without a clear motive. And the article points out this is often linked to mental health conditions.
Okay, so that's different from just, being a sneaky person.
Yeah, it seems to be more of a deep-seated behavior pattern. Then there are the lies of omission, which we talked about before. That's when you leave out important details to create a misleading impression.
Yeah, like conveniently forgetting to mention that you, accidentally crashed the company car.
Exactly. It's still deceptive, even though you haven't technically said anything untrue. Then there's a category that I think a lot of people immediately think of when they think of lying. Lies for personal gain.
Ah, yes. The self-serving ones.
Yeah, these are lies told to get ahead, whether it's for money, social status, or career advancement, like lying on your resume to get a job.
Right. Embellishing your qualifications, that kind of thing. So what's next?
Well, then you have compulsive lies. And they're similar to pathological lies, but there's a subtle difference.
What's that?
The article points out that compulsive liars are often aware that they're lying. They might even want to stop, but they just can't seem to help themselves. It's a deeply ingrained habit.
That's interesting. So it's not that they don't know they're lying, it's that they can't control it.
Right. And finally, the last category, these are the ones that can be pretty harmful. Deceptive lies.
Those sound serious.
They are. These are the manipulative lies. The ones intended to hurt or exploit someone, like a scammer who tricks people out of their money.
Yeah, those are definitely not good. So that's quite a range of lying behaviors. But I think the big question, the one we're all wondering, is why?
Yeah.
Why do people lie in the first place? The article seems to explore a lot of different motivations.
It does, and there's no single answer. The most straightforward reason is to avoid punishment, whether it's a kid trying not to get grounded or an adult trying to avoid legal trouble.
Makes sense. Fear of consequences is a big motivator.
Absolutely. But sometimes it's about protecting others, not just ourselves.
Okay, how so?
Well, sometimes we lie to shield someone from harm or embarrassment or emotional pain. Like, a doctor who might soften the blow when delivering bad news to a patient.
Right. I can see that. So it's not always selfish. Sometimes it's about protecting the people we care about.
Exactly. But of course, sometimes it is about self-preservation. Sometimes we lie to gain some kind of advantage. Like in a negotiation, you might exaggerate your willingness to walk away to get a better deal.
Oh, yeah. Those strategic lies. It's all about playing the game.
Right. And then there's this whole idea of preserving our self-image. We want to look good in front of others.
Oh, I think we've all been there.
Absolutely. We might exaggerate our accomplishments or downplay our failures to make ourselves seem more successful or competent.
It's all about appearances, isn't it?
It is. And then there are those little lies we tell to save face, like, I'm late because of traffic, when really you just overslept.
Oh, absolutely. Classic. I've definitely used that one. Or, my dog ate my homework.
Exactly. Those little social lies we use to avoid awkward situations or embarrassment. And then there's the whole dynamic of lying to fit in, to be accepted by a group.
Right. Peer pressure can be a powerful thing.
It can. We might stretch the truth to gain approval or avoid being ostracized.
Okay, now this is where it gets really interesting. The article also talks about some connections between lying and certain psychological patterns.
It does. But it's important to note that these are just associations, not direct cause and effect relationships. For example, people with certain personality traits might be more prone to certain types of lying, but it's much more complex than that.
Right, so it's not like you can say, oh, this person has this trait, so they must be a liar.
Exactly. Human behavior is just too complicated for that.
So we've talked about all these different types of lies and why people might tell them, but what about spotting them? Can we actually tell when someone is lying to us?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The article does offer some potential indicators, but it's important to remember that there's no foolproof way to detect a lie.
Yeah, people are tricky.
They are. And a lot of the signs that people associate with lying, like avoiding eye contact or fidgeting, can also just be signs of nervousness or anxiety. But there are some things to watch out for. Like what? Well, one thing is inconsistency. If someone's story changes over time, or they give conflicting details, that could be a red flag.
Makes sense. If the story keeps changing, something's probably up.
Right. And then there's body language. We've all heard about things like avoiding eye contact or fidgeting.
Yeah, those are the classic telltale signs, right?
They are. And the article does mention them, along with other things like shifting posture and touching the face more frequently. But again, these can also be signs of general discomfort, not necessarily lying.
So it's all about context.
Exactly. What about speech patterns? Have you ever noticed how someone's voice changes when they're lying?
Sometimes, yeah. They might talk really fast or hesitate a lot.
Right. Changes in speech can definitely be revealing. It could be speaking too fast or too slow, pausing for a long time before answering a question, or even over-explaining things.
Like they're trying too hard to convince you.
Exactly.
The article also mentions something called micro-expressions. What are those?
Oh, those are interesting. They're these very brief, involuntary facial expressions that can betray someone's true emotions, even if they're trying to hide them.
Feels like their face gives them away.
In a way, yeah. It might just be a fleeting flash of sadness or anger or fear, even while they're smiling or trying to appear neutral.
Wow, that's pretty subtle.
It is. It takes a trained eye to spot them. And finally, there are physiological changes that can happen when someone lies.
Like what?
Things like an increased heart rate, sweating, or a dry mouth. It's basically the body's stress response kicking in.
Yeah, I can see how lying can be stressful for some people.
It can be. But again, it's important to remember that these physiological responses can happen in other stressful situations too. So it's not a foolproof sign of lying.
Right. It all comes back to context.
Yeah.
So we've covered a lot about how to spot a lie, but what about the ethics of it? Is lying ever okay? The article touches on that too.
It does, and it's a tricky area. Generally speaking, lying is seen as unethical. But the article acknowledges that there are situations where people might feel justified in bending the truth.
Like what?
Well, a classic example is lying to protect someone from harm, like hiding someone from an abuser.
Right. In that case, it seems like most people would agree that lying is the right thing to do.
Exactly. And then there are situations where, maybe withholding information is seen as necessary to prevent panic or maintain stability, like during a crisis.
Okay, so those are more complex situations.
They are. And then there are the little white lies we talked about earlier, the ones we tell to avoid conflict or hurt feelings.
Right, those everyday social lies.
Yeah. Technically, they're still deception, but the intent is usually good and the potential harm is minimal.
So it's all about navigating the complexities of social interaction.
Exactly. But it's important to remember that the article is just presenting these as commonly perceived justifications. It's not necessarily endorsing them.
Right. It's up to each individual to decide what they believe is right or wrong. Okay, so wrapping things up here. Lying is a pretty common human behavior. It's something we all do, to some extent. But the article also offers some suggestions on how we can encourage more honesty.
It does. And they're pretty practical suggestions, like creating an environment where people feel safe to tell the truth, without fear of punishment or judgment.
So basically, building trust.
Exactly. Encouraging open communication, being honest ourselves, and teaching kids about the importance of honesty from a young age.
Those are all great points.
I think so too.
So for our listeners out there, this deep dive into the psychology of lying has shown us that it's a really complex topic. It's not just black and white. There's so many different types of lies and so many reasons why people tell them.
And while we talked about some ways to spot a lie, it's important to remember that there's no magic formula. It's all about context and understanding the nuances of human behavior.
Right. It's not about becoming, a human lie detector. It's about understanding ourselves and the people around us better.
Absolutely. And that's what makes this topic so fascinating.
I agree. So here's something for you all to think about as we wrap up. Considering all the different types of lies and the reasons behind them, what kind of truth teller do you want to be? And how can this knowledge about the psychology of lying help you in your own interactions and choices?
Those are great questions.
Well, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure. Hello, and welcome to the Learn English Lab. I'm your host, Mike, and today we've got a really fascinating deep dive lined up.
Yeah, I'm excited for this one.
I am too. I'm excited to welcome Sarah to the show. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Today we are talking about happiness and...
Ooh, happiness. Who doesn't love a good conversation about happiness?
I mean, it's something we all want, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone wants to be happy.
But I think it's a lot more complicated than people think.
Oh, for sure. It's not just about smiling all the time or, winning the lottery or anything like that.
Yeah, like what actually is happiness?
Right. It's a big question.
So we're going to try to dig into some of that today. Unpack the science behind it a little bit,
Right.
Look at, the biological and the psychological factors that contribute to a fulfilling life.
I love that the science of happiness, because it really is a science.
It is. There's so much research out there.
There is, yeah.
So where do we even begin? I guess maybe a good starting point is defining what we mean by happiness, because it's not just one thing, is it?
No, definitely not. And actually, researchers often talk about two different types of happiness.
Okay.
So there's what they call hedonic happiness.
Hedonic happiness.
Yes, basically that kind of immediate pleasure or enjoyment that we get from things.
Okay.
So, think like a really delicious meal or a fun night out with friends.
Like that rush you get when your team scores.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or, that first sip of coffee in the morning.
Yeah. Okay. So those kind of short-term pleasure.
Exactly. And it's very much driven by those external things, those stimuli,
Okay.
But then there's this other type of happiness that's a bit deeper, and that's called eudaimonic happiness.
Eudaimonic happiness.
Yes, it's a mouthful.
It is.
But this type of happiness is more about meaning and purpose
Yeah.
in life. It's about personal growth. It's about feeling like you're contributing to something bigger than yourself.
Okay, so it's less about those external things, those quick hits, and more about something internal.
Exactly. It's about feeling fulfilled.
So is it like the difference between, like a sugary snack that gives you a quick burst of energy versus like a nourishing meal that keeps you going all day?
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
I like that.
So both are good, right? But
Absolutely. Both have their place.
yeah.
But, if you're only ever having those sugary snacks, you're probably not going to feel that great in the long run.
Yeah, and I imagine the research backs that up, right? That the eudaimonic happiness is more associated with long-term well-being.
Exactly. Spot on. Research is showing increasingly that it's really this deeper sense of fulfillment that's linked to better mental and physical health, stronger relationships, all of that good stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like having a strong foundation versus, just building your house on sand.
I like that analogy.
So we've talked about these two types of happiness, but let's dig into the nitty-gritty a little bit. You mentioned earlier that there's a biological component to happiness, like our bodies are actually involved in this.
Oh, absolutely. Our brains and bodies are incredible. They produce this whole array of chemicals, neurotransmitters, hormones that are constantly influencing our mood and how we experience happiness.
So it's like a chemistry experiment going on inside of us.
Kind of, yeah.
So let's talk about some of these chemicals, because I know there are a few key players. Everyone's heard of dopamine, right? The reward chemical.
Oh, yes. Dopamine is a big one. It plays a crucial role in our brain's reward system.
Okay, so how does that work?
So basically, whenever we achieve a goal or experience something pleasurable, our brain releases dopamine, and that gives us that feeling of satisfaction.
So like when you finally finish that project you've been working on.
Exactly. Or when you eat a piece of chocolate.
Or when you hit a new personal best at the gym.
Yeah, anything that gives you that sense of reward.
Okay.
But what's really fascinating is that research suggests that the anticipation of a reward can sometimes be even more powerful than the reward itself.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So like planning that vacation you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
Your brain might be buzzing with dopamine even more during the planning stages than when you're actually on the trip.
So it's like the journey is as good as the destination.
Exactly.
I like that. Okay, so that's dopamine. What about serotonin?
Serotonin is another crucial neurotransmitter,
Okay.
and it's often called the mood stabilizer because it plays a big role in regulating our mood, sleep, appetite, even social behavior.
Okay, so if you're feeling down or anxious, could that be related to low serotonin levels?
Yeah, potentially low levels of serotonin have been linked to depression and anxiety.
I see.
But the good news is there are lots of natural ways to boost serotonin.
Oh, really? Like what?
Well, things like regular exercise, spending time outdoors, getting enough sunlight,
That's good to know.
even simple things like connecting with loved ones and practicing gratitude can have a positive impact.
So it's not all about medication.
No, not at all, although medication can be helpful in certain cases.
Of course.
But yeah, lifestyle factors play a huge role.
Okay, and I think we've got one more chemical to talk about, oxytocin.
Ah, yes, the love
The
hormone.
love hormone. Tell us about that.
So oxytocin is released during moments of physical touch, social bonding acts of kindness.
Okay.
And it basically fosters this feeling of trust, connection, and belonging.
So like when you hug someone you care about.
Exactly. Or, when you do something nice for someone and you get that warm, fuzzy feeling inside,
Yeah.
that's oxytocin working its magic.
And that reinforces how important relationships are for our well-being.
Absolutely. Our connections with others are fundamental to our happiness.
Okay, so we've covered dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin. Any other key players in the happiness game?
Well, we can't forget about endorphins.
Endorphins, right? The runner's high.
Exactly. Endorphins are our body's natural painkillers and mood boosters.
So they're released when we exercise.
Yes, during physical exertion, but also in response to pain and even laughter.
So a good laugh can actually give you a mood boost.
Absolutely. Laughter is the best medicine, as they say.
And it's all thanks to endorphins.
Exactly.
So it sounds like our bodies are really working hard to keep us happy.
They are, in a way.
And it's amazing how many different factors are involved.
Yeah, it's a complex system, but that's what makes it so fascinating.
So we've covered the biological side of things, but what about the psychological side?
Yeah, so our minds are just as important as our bodies when it comes to happiness.
Okay, and are there like certain frameworks or models that psychologists use to understand happiness?
Absolutely. There are lots of different theories and models, but one that I find particularly helpful is the PERMA model.
PERMA.
Yeah, it's an acronym that stands for 5 key elements of well-being.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
So the P stands for positive emotions.
Okay, so experiencing joy, gratitude, hope, all those good feelings.
Exactly.
Okay, what about E?
E is for engagement.
Engagement.
Yeah, it's about being completely absorbed in an activity.
Oh, like when you're so focused on something, you lose track of time.
Exactly. That's often called flow, and it's a really powerful state to be in.
Yeah, I love those moments.
Me too.
Okay, so positive emotions, engagement. What's R?
R is for relationships.
Of course.
Because as we talked about before, our connections with others are absolutely crucial for our well-being.
So nurturing those bonds, spending time with loved ones.
Exactly.
Okay, what about M?
M is for meaning.
Meaning, so having a sense of purpose in life.
Exactly. Feeling like you're part of something bigger than yourself, whether that's through your work, your relationships, your hobbies, anything that gives you that sense of why.
I like that. And finally, A.
A is for accomplishment.
Accomplishment. So achieving goals, feeling competent.
Exactly. Those feelings of success and mastery contribute to our overall sense of fulfillment.
So positive emotions, engagement relationships, meaning accomplishment.
Yes, those are the 5 pillars of well-being according to this model.
And I imagine all of them are important, right?
They are, but research suggests that meaning and engagement tend to be particularly strong predictors of overall life satisfaction.
Interesting. So it's not just about feeling good. It's about feeling like your life has purpose and that you're actively involved in it.
Exactly. It's about living a full and engaged life.
Now, I want to touch on another interesting concept, the hedonic treadmill. Have you heard of this?
Oh yes, the hedonic treadmill. It's a fascinating idea.
So what's the basic premise?
Well, the theory suggests that we humans have a tendency to adapt to both positive and negative events in our lives.
Okay.
So even after a major life change, whether it's good or bad, we tend to eventually return to a relatively stable level of happiness.
So it's like we're on this treadmill where we keep running and running, but we never really get anywhere.
Kind of, yeah. It's like our happiness set point resets.
So like if someone wins the lottery, they might be ecstatic at first.
Right.
But over time, that initial euphoria fades and they end up back at their baseline level of happiness.
Exactly. And the same goes for negative events. After a difficult breakup or a job loss.
Yeah.
We might feel devastated at first.
Yeah.
But eventually the intensity of those feelings tends to lessen and we start to adapt.
So does that mean we're all just stuck at a certain level of happiness no matter what we do?
Well, it's not quite that deterministic. The speed and extent to which we adapt can vary from person to person.
Okay.
And while we might not be able to completely escape the hedonic treadmill, there are things we can do to slow it down, or at least make the ride a bit smoother.
Like what?
Well, practices like gratitude and mindfulness can help us appreciate what we have and savor positive experiences for longer.
Okay, so instead of always chasing the next big thing, we focus on the present moment.
Exactly, and focusing on intrinsic goals.
Yeah.
Those things that are inherently rewarding to us rather than external rewards like money or status can also lead to more lasting satisfaction.
So it's about finding joy in the process rather than just the outcome.
Exactly.
Now, I also want to talk about the happiness set point because I think this ties in with what we've been discussing.
Yes, the happiness set point is another important concept.
So what is it exactly?
Well, research suggests that our baseline level of happiness is partially determined by our genes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's estimated that genetics account for about 50% of our happiness set point.
So some people are just naturally predisposed to be happier than others.
It seems that way.
Okay, what about the other 50%?
Well, external circumstances like our wealth, health, and relationships play a role. They contribute about 10%.
Okay, so our genes and our circumstances make up about 60% of our happiness level.
That's right. But here's the really empowering part. The remaining 40% is thought to be influenced by our intentional activities and the choices we make.
Wow, so almost half of our happiness is within our control.
Exactly.
That's actually really encouraging.
It is. It means that even if we have a genetic predisposition or are facing difficult circumstances, we still have a significant amount of agency in shaping our own well-being.
So let's talk about some of those intentional activities. What are some evidence-based strategies that people can use to boost their happiness?
Well, as we mentioned before, gratitude is a powerful tool, making a conscious effort to appreciate the good things in your life. Even the small things can have a big impact on your overall happiness.
So like keeping a gratitude journal or just taking a few moments each day to reflect on what you're grateful for.
Exactly. And another key strategy is to engage in activities that you find meaningful.
Okay.
Whether that's pursuing a hobby, volunteering for a cause you care about, or doing work that aligns with your values.
So finding your purpose and living in alignment with it.
Exactly.
What about relationships?
Relationships are essential for happiness. We've already talked about that. But it's worth emphasizing, again, spending quality time with loved ones, nurturing those connections is crucial.
And expressing appreciation for those people.
Absolutely.
What about physical health?
Well, taking care of your physical health is also incredibly important. Our minds and bodies are interconnected, so things like regular exercise, a healthy diet, and enough sleep all contribute to our overall well-being.
So it's not just about feeling good mentally, it's also about feeling good physically.
Exactly.
And I imagine mindfulness and meditation can also play a role.
Yes. Mindfulness and meditation are fantastic practices for cultivating a sense of calm and presence. They help us manage stress, regulate our emotions, and even change the structure of our brains in positive ways.
And what about mindset?
Mindset is huge. Cultivating a growth mindset, believing in your ability to learn and grow, can make a big difference in how you approach challenges and setbacks.
So instead of seeing failures as the end of the world, you see them as opportunities for growth.
Exactly.
Now, are there any things that we should try to avoid if we want to be happier?
Yes, there are a few things to watch out for. One is excessive materialism.
Okay.
Always striving for more possessions or comparing yourself to others can lead to dissatisfaction and a sense of never having enough.
So it's about focusing on what truly matters to you rather than getting caught up in the consumerist culture.
Exactly. And speaking of comparison, social comparison, especially on social media, can be a real happiness killer.
Yeah, it's easy to get caught up in the highlight reel and feel like everyone else's life is perfect.
Right. And that can make us feel inadequate or envious.
So maybe taking a break from social media or being more mindful about who you follow could be helpful.
Absolutely.
Any other things to avoid?
Well, spending too much time indoors can also have a negative impact on our mood.
Really?
Yeah. Research has shown that spending time in nature can reduce stress, improve mood, and boost creativity.
So get out there and enjoy the fresh air and sunshine.
Exactly.
And what about acts of kindness?
Oh, acts of kindness are amazing for our happiness. Doing something nice for someone else. Even something small can have a ripple effect, not just on the recipient, but also on ourselves.
So it's like a win-win.
Exactly. And finally, I would say setting and achieving goals can also contribute to our happiness.
So having something to strive for, something to look forward to.
Exactly. It gives us a sense of direction and accomplishment.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I think it's clear that happiness is not some magical destination that we reach.
No, it's definitely not a one-time event.
It's an ongoing journey.
It is, and it's influenced by a complex interplay of factors, our biology, our psychology, our choices.
Mm-hmm. And while we might not have control over everything, there are so many things we can do to cultivate more happiness in our lives.
Absolutely, and that's what's so empowering.
So Sarah, thank you so much for sharing your insights with us today. This has been a really enlightened conversation.
It's been my pleasure.
And for all of you listening out there, I hope this deep dive has given you some new perspectives and practical tips for creating a more joyful and fulfilling life. And if you enjoyed this exploration into the science of happiness, be sure to like, share, and subscribe to this YouTube channel for more fascinating deep dives.
See you next time. Ever wish you could just skip the small talk and know what someone was really thinking? You know, not like actual mind reading, but something almost as cool.
Yeah.
Unlocking that secret code, figuring out body language.
I like that, like a superpower.
Yeah. And it's less about, I don't know, just intuition or something.
Right.
The sources you sent, they make it clear. It's way more about science than you'd think. There are actual cues, things you can learn to recognize.
It's about decoding those silent signals, right? The ones we're all sending out without even realizing it half the time.
Exactly. And that's our mission today, to, give you the tools, to become a body language decoder yourself. We're going to cover a ton: faces, personal space, you name it. Did you know there's a thing called micro expressions? It's crazy the stuff you can pick up on if you know what you're looking for. Imagine, in a meeting or out with friends.
Yeah, even just watching the news.
Oh, totally. You start seeing things in a whole new light, like what's really going on.
It adds a whole other dimension to your understanding, for sure.
Okay, so then why even bother? Why is body language such a big deal?
Well, according to the research, a lot of what we communicate doesn't actually come from the words we say.
Really?
Yeah, depending on the situation, you're looking at something like 70 to even 93% that's nonverbal.
Wow, that's huge.
Yeah.
I mean, does that hold up even if it's, just straightforward information, no emotions or anything?
It's a good question. And the exact numbers, they can definitely shift around depending on the study and what kind of communication we're talking about. If it's a super technical briefing or something, maybe words matter more.
Right.
But the big idea that nonverbal cues are crucial, especially when you've got emotions involved, that seems pretty solid. Think about it if you want to know if someone's being sincere.
You're going to watch their face, listen to their tone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's this anthropologist, Ray Birdwhistle. He did a lot of work on kinesics.
That's the study of
body movement, gestures, all that. And he basically argued that those signals often carry more weight than the actual spoken language.
Whoa, so it's like we're having two conversations at once, one with words And then this whole other one going on silently.
Pretty much. And even though Albert Morabian's that 738-55 rule,
Yeah, I've heard of that.
it's really specific to how we understand feelings, attitudes, but it does illustrate the point, how we say something, the body language that goes with it, that often overpowers the words themselves, especially when it comes to emotions, yeah.
So the takeaway is, even if the exact percentages change, what we don't say is still saying a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Now, zooming out a bit, evolutionarily speaking, how do we even get to this point where we're communicating without words?
Well, think about it. Way before we had language as we know it, body language was crucial for survival. For our ancestors, it was how they spotted danger, showed dominance, formed bonds, all that.
Like, you see someone tense up, their face changes, you know something's wrong.
Instantaneously, yeah. It's like a primal response built right in.
Fascinating. So it's universal then, this body language.
Yeah. To a point, yes. There are some expressions, emotions that seem to be hardwired cross-culturally, but culture definitely plays a role too in how things are expressed and understood. That's something we'll definitely get into more later.
Makes sense. Okay, so let's dive into the nitty-gritty. What are the main things we should be looking at when we're trying to, decipher someone's body language?
All right, so the first thing is, it's not about cherry picking, okay? Like, one gesture in isolation might not mean much. You need to look for patterns, clusters of cues that back each other up. So we can start with facial expressions.
Ah, yes. The good old window to the soul.
Right. There's a reason that phrase is so popular. There's this psychologist, Paul Ekman. He did this amazing research. Identified 7 universal emotions. They show up in facial expressions the same way, no matter where you go in the world.
Like?
Happiness, sadness, anger, surprise, fear, disgust, and contempt.
Interesting. So is it just about, is someone smiling or not? Or is there more to it?
It's definitely more nuanced than that. So take a genuine smile, for example. We call it a Duchenne smile. And what happens is, it's not just the corners of your mouth turning up.
Right.
It also involves the muscles around your eyes, those crow's feet wrinkles,
I see. So there's a difference between a real smile and a fake one.
Exactly. And they've actually done studies using fancy tech that can measure the muscle activity so you can tell the difference.
Wow, that's amazing. So what else should we be looking for, face-wise?
Well, a furrowed brow can mean a few things. Confusion, worry, anger even. Pursed lips can signal disapproval or tension, even just deep concentration sometimes. Tight jaw, that's often a sign of stress, holding back anger. And then there are micro-expressions.
Those sound intense. What are they exactly?
They're these super fast expressions, like flashes, that happen for just a fraction of a second. They often reveal a hidden emotion before the person can control their face.
Whoa. So if you can spot them.
You're getting a glimpse of their true feelings. But it definitely takes practice.
Okay, moving down from the face, the eyes. They say the eyes are the most expressive part of the face.
Oh, for sure. Direct eye contact. That can be a sign of engagement, feeling confident, or sometimes even aggression, dominance, depending on the situation.
Right. And then if someone's avoiding eye contact, that usually means
discomfort, maybe shyness, or possibly even that they're trying to deceive you, although you always got to factor in cultural norms there.
Oh, yeah, that's important.
What's really fascinating to me is how pupils react.
Pupils.
Yeah. So when something gets us excited or interested, good or bad excitement, our pupils actually get bigger. It's an automatic response tied to our emotions. And then rapid blinking. That can show nervousness or that someone's mind is racing. Steady gaze, on the other hand, that might mean they're really focused or even trying to intimidate you, depending.
So much information packed into just the eyes. Now, what about how we hold our whole body, posture?
Posture is a big one. Think about someone standing tall, shoulders relaxed, chest open.
They seem confident, approachable.
Right. That's an open posture. Now, flip that slumped shoulders, arms crossed tight across the chest.
Closed off.
Yeah, closed posture. Could be insecurity, maybe feeling defensive, not really engaged. Leaning in usually means interest. Leaning back, maybe they want some space, not so into it. And then there's mirroring.
Oh, I've heard of that.
That's when people subconsciously start copying each other's posture, movements. It's a sign of connection, building rapport.
I've definitely noticed that, when you really click with someone.
Yeah, it happens naturally. Okay, so next, gestures. Hands, arms. How do those play into this whole body language thing?
Yeah, I'm curious about that too. What about open palms?
Well, those are usually linked to honesty, sincerity, like, hey, I'm open, nothing to hide. Clenched fists, though, that's more tension, anger, ready to fight.
Makes sense. What about pointing?
Pointing can be used to emphasize, but it can also be seen as aggressive, even accusing, and then self-touching.
Like what?
Touching the face, neck, hair. It's often a way to self-soothe when we're anxious, uncomfortable. There's also a distinction between illustrators, those gestures that go along with our words, and adapters.
Adapters.
Those are the unconscious movements, like fidgeting, adjusting clothes. Those can signal underlying nervousness, maybe even that something's not quite right, you know?
So, like, if someone's fidgeting a lot, that could be a red flag.
It could be.
Huh.
All right, last but not least, personal space. Like, how close someone stands to you.
Yeah, we all have that bubble.
Proxemics is the fancy term. And there are actually different zones of personal space, from intimate, like super close, to social, more for acquaintances. So if someone's standing closer than what feels comfortable for your relationship, it could mean they're trying to dominate or be aggressive, or even that they're attracted to you, you know?
Interesting. And if they're way far away?
Could be discomfort, maybe they're just aloof or don't trust you. And of course, cultural norms play a huge role in all this.
Right. So it's like all these different levels of meaning just in how we position ourselves.
Exactly. Oh, and we can't forget about the way we speak, too. The tone, speed, volume, that's all part of body language, too, even though technically it's called paralanguage.
Right. Like a shaky voice.
Could mean fear, nervousness, loud, forceful tone, anger, trying to take charge. Slow, deliberate way of speaking might show thoughtfulness, but also could be a stall tactic if someone's lying, you know? And changes in pitch, how our voice goes up and down, that can reveal a lot about our emotions, too.
It's amazing how many layers there are to communication.
Yeah.
But I'm starting to see it's not about taking one gesture and saying, this means that.
No, absolutely not. Context is everything.
Right. So like arms crossed, maybe they're just cold.
Exactly. You got to look at the whole situation, what's normal for that person, and are there other cues that match up?
It's not like a body language dictionary.
Nope. And then you've got cultural norms, too. What's polite in one place might be rude somewhere else. Like in some East Asian cultures, not making direct eye contact is a sign of respect. But in the West, it can come off as shifty, you know?
Yeah, good point. So you have to know who you're dealing with culturally.
Very important. And it's super helpful to get a sense of someone's baseline behavior. Like, how do they usually sit? How much eye contact do they make? Once you know that, you can spot the changes, the things that might signal a shift in their mood, their intentions. And going back to what we said before, looking for clusters of cues, right? Several things that point in the same direction.
Okay.
It's way more reliable than just one gesture by itself.
Okay, so it's about patterns, context, and cultural background. Now let's talk about specific emotions. Like, what does happiness look like in terms of body language?
So happiness, the main thing, is going to be that genuine smile, the Duchenne smile with the eyes involved. Usually relaxed posture, open gestures, kind of an upbeat vibe overall. But if the smile seems forced or their eyes aren't in it, could be they're hiding something else.
Okay. What about sadness?
Sadness often shows up as slumped shoulders, mouth turned down, movements are slower, less eye contact, their gaze might be down, and sometimes the eyebrows kind of pull together in the middle.
What about when someone's angry?
Anger is usually pretty obvious. Tense jaw, narrowed eyes, that furrowed brow we talked about, maybe even a flushed face. Their posture might stiffen up, gestures are sharp, sudden pointing, fists clenched, and their voice often gets louder, harsher.
Fear. That seems like it would have some strong body language too.
Oh, yeah. Wide eyes, eyebrows raised, mouth open, maybe even gasping for air. They might freeze up or try to back away. Rapid breathing, pale skin, those are all signs of fear.
And disgust. What does that look like?
Think about smelling something awful. That wrinkled nose, eyes squinted, upper lip raised, those are the classic disgust expressions. Might even turn their head away, like they're trying to get away from whatever's disgusting them.
And contempt. That's a little more subtle, right?
It is. Contempt is often shown by a kind of one-sided smirk, just one corner of the mouth lifting. Eyes might narrow a bit, and they might turn their head away slightly, like they think they're better than you.
Last one, surprise. That seems like a quick one.
Yeah, surprise is super short-lived. Eyebrows up, eyes wide, mouth open, but it usually only lasts a few seconds before it changes into something else, depending on what caused the surprise.
Okay, that's really helpful, breaking down each emotion like that. Now let's talk about lying. Can you really tell if someone's lying just by their body language?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And honestly, it's more complicated than a lot of people think. There's no one guaranteed tell, like Pinocchio's nose.
Right, so not everyone who avoids eye contact is lying.
Exactly. And just being fidgety doesn't mean someone's dishonest. Nervousness can come from all sorts of things.
So how can you tell? What should you look for?
The biggest clues usually involve a disconnect between what someone's saying and what their body's doing. Like maybe they say they're happy, but there's a flicker of sadness in their face, a micro expression.
Gotcha. So it's about looking for those mismatches.
Yeah. Also, watch out for overcompensating, like trying too hard to appear honest by staring you down or being super still. Hesitations in their speech, sudden changes in posture, a lot of self-touching those can all be signs that someone's uncomfortable with the truth. And do their gestures, their facial expressions match what they're saying? Like if they're describing something sad, but their tone is cheerful and they're relaxed, something might be off.
So again, it's about those inconsistencies more than any one specific gesture.
Exactly. And it's super important to remember that what's considered deceptive in one culture might be totally normal in another. So you always have to take that into account.
Right. Can't just assume everyone follows the same rules.
No.
So we've covered what to look for. What about actually getting better at this? Are there exercises people can do?
Totally. Like anything, practice makes perfect. One great tip, start paying attention to the people you see regularly. Get a sense of their baseline, like how do they usually stand, what are their typical gestures, all that. Then, if something changes, you'll notice.
Become a people watcher.
Basically, yeah. Go to a park, a cafe, whatever, and just observe people. Try to figure out their emotions, their relationships, based on their body language.
Interesting. What else?
Try mirroring someone subtly when you're talking to them.
Oh, like we talked about earlier.
Yep. Helps build rapport, but also makes you more aware of those cues. And ask calibration questions.
Calibration questions.
Questions where you already know the answer. That way, you can see how someone acts when they have no reason to lie. Gives you a benchmark for their truthful behavior. You can even record yourself during conversations. You might be surprised what you notice.
Like things you're doing that you didn't even realize.
Exactly. And lastly, try watching a show or movie with the sound off. Just focus on the body language, see if you can guess what's going on. Then turn the sound back on and see how well you did.
Cool. So now switching gears a bit, how does knowing all this actually help us in real life?
Well, in relationships, it can make you more empathetic. You'll start to pick up on unspoken needs, see when someone's upset, even if they don't say it.
That's huge.
At work, it can boost your communication skills. You'll be able to tell if your audience is engaged or if they're tuning you out.
And you said negotiations too.
Oh, yeah. It can be really helpful in negotiations. You can get a sense of someone's true position, see if they're bluffing. And just in general, you start to understand social dynamics better. Who's in charge, who's following, who's interested, who's not.
Makes sense. So basically, it makes you more emotionally intelligent. Now, what about the science behind all this? We touched on it briefly earlier, but what's actually happening in our brains when we process body language?
So there are these things called mirror neurons, right? And they fire not just when we do something, but when we see someone else doing it.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's like our brain is creating a simulation so we can kind of feel what they're feeling. That's a big part how we understand nonverbal cues. And then there's the amygdala, that part of the brain that deals with emotions. It's super sensitive to body language. And it can process those signals even before we're consciously aware of them.
So that's where those gut feelings come from.
Could be, yeah. And research has even shown that different parts of the brain specialize in reading different aspects of body language. It's crazy complex.
Okay, so now that we're getting the hang of this, are there any common mistakes we should watch out for?
Oh, definitely. One big one is overanalyzing. Like, not every little movement means something major. Don't read too much into every twitch and fidget. And confirmation bias is another danger.
Confirmation bias.
It's when you look for evidence that supports what you already believe, and you ignore the stuff that contradicts it. You gotta stay objective when you're reading body language. And don't forget that words still matter. Body language gives you context, nuance, but it doesn't replace what people actually say.
Good point. So basically, don't jump to conclusions and don't ignore the verbal side of things.
Exactly. Now, if you want to take it to the next level, there are even more subtle cues you can start to pick up on.
Oh, like what?
Well, like which way someone's feet are pointed. That can often show you where they really want to go, even if their body's facing you. Breathing patterns, too shallow, fast breaths, probably anxious, slow, deep breaths, more relaxed. Look for changes in skin tone, like blushing. That could be embarrassment or anger. Even little things, like someone constantly adjusting their collar, might mean they're uncomfortable, maybe not being totally truthful. And handshakes.
Oh yeah, those are important.
A firm handshake, that's usually confidence. Limp handshake. maybe insecurity. There's a whole world of meaning there too.
Okay, so putting it all together, can you give me an example, like a real-life situation where all this comes into play?
Sure. Imagine you're in a meeting, right? And your colleague's presenting a new idea. They seem confident, good eye contact, all that. But they keep touching their neck, shifting their weight. Their smile doesn't quite reach their eyes, and their feet are pointed towards the door. And when you ask them a tough question, their voice gets higher. They start saying, and a lot.
I see.
Now, any one of those things on its own might not mean much. But taken together, it paints a different picture.
Yeah, like they're not as confident as they're trying to appear.
Right. They're nervous, maybe not sure about their own idea, and probably just want to get out of there. So by looking at the whole package, you get a much better understanding of what's really going on.
That's such a good example. So as we wrap up this deep dive into body language, what's the most important thing you want people to remember?
I think the main takeaway is that understanding body language, it's a skill anyone can learn. It's not just about memorizing a bunch of gestures, though. It's about paying attention, practicing, considering the whole context.
And it makes you a better communicator, right? More in tune with people.
Absolutely. So for anyone who wants to start applying this, where should they begin?
Yeah, what's a good first step?
Just pick one or two things to focus on, like facial expressions or posture. Start observing those in your everyday interactions. The more you do it, the more natural it'll become.
Small steps.
Yep.
And the payoff.
You start to see beyond the words, you know? You get those deeper insights into what people are really thinking and feeling. And that can transform your relationships, your work, everything.
Wow, that's powerful. So as you go about your day, think about all the ways you communicated without even saying a word. And maybe the messages you might have missed. What will you see differently now?
That's a great question to ponder.
Thanks so much for joining us on this deep dive.